A jury found Eric Ruch Jr. guilty of voluntary manslaughter in the 2017 shooting death of Dennis Plowden. Prosecutors say after crashing his car during a chase, Plowden was holding his empty left hand in front of his face, trying to obey commands when Ruch shot him in the head. The defense had argued Ruch fired because he thought Plowden was reaching for a gun in his jacket.
Okay, well, it's certainly a big headline in the city of Philadelphia. Daily News, there's a prosecutor right in the middle of the screen there walking out. And then the Inquirer also above the fold, the main headline this morning. Ex-Philly officer convicted in man's killing. So, attorney and a former police officer himself, Shaka Johnson, joins us now.
Good morning.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
What was the key to the whole case?
I think the key in terms of a conviction for voluntary manslaughter is that it had that one additional piece, which is provocation. Right? For a conviction for voluntary manslaughter, they have to prove that there was sufficient provocation which led to the unjustified killing. I don't think there was much dispute about there's a person dead, and then there was provocation. So 2 of the 3 elements were already made. The provocation being Mr. Plowden allegedly ran into police cars, was fleeing from officers, even maybe he is questionable, had some hand movements. So provocation was there as well. The question is, and I see what a very skilled defense attorney tried to do. What he tried to do is what has worked historically in the past for many police officers, which is why the conviction rate for them are considerably low. He tried to make it a subjective thing in the officer's mind, something that is very, very difficult to disprove. He tried to make it Officer Ruch was afraid. He didn't know what Mr. Plowden was doing or couldn't see his hands. All subjective. And when you do that, well, the jury says, well, we don't know what the officer was thinking. And that maybe produces reasonable doubt. But we're living in a different time now. And I think nationally, over the past, I would say almost decade, you're seeing a growing trend. We have recent cases, but I'm talking about almost like the past 10 years, where I think citizens in Class A1 cities like these, not the more conservative spaces, but in cities like Philadelphia, are becoming a little bit less disinterested in the subjective officer's view and more interested in hard facts that you can produce. I don't know if this is a guilty conviction in a more conservative part of the country, but here, I'm not surprised at all.
And what do we know, too? Because when you say not surprised, it is important that historically this is the first time a police officer has been convicted.
Yes.
Right? In Philadelphia.
Correct.
But even though there have been charges that have been put out over the past 50 years.
Correct. And let's be clear. He's not convicted of murder. He was still found not guilty of the 3rd-degree murder. So that, statistic holds true. But as far as the voluntary manslaughter, a lot of times from a prosecutorial standpoint, they do not put voluntary manslaughter with the murder. They don't want to give a jury something lesser to convict the officer of. But I think that's foolhardy because historically, like we all just agreed, they do not get convicted of murder. So they put the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter, and he was in fact convicted of that.
And what is that punishable? Up to how many years, or what? The
statutory maximum for that is 20 years. Obviously, this officer has no criminal record, so the likelihood of him receiving that kind of number is sort of low. I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 54 to 60 months, plus or minus 12.
And they asked, his attorney asked that he be let out until the sentencing, but the judge said no.
No, because like anyone else convicted of killing a person unjustifiably, bail is to be revoked. You're to be reincarcerated pending sentencing.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you both.